Hello, hello. Welcome back. If you are here for the first time, then welcome, and I hope you enjoy what you're about to watch. And if you have been here before, thank you very much for coming back. I really appreciate your continued support. My name is Jennifer, and this is Jen the Bookworm. So today I'm bringing another tag video, and the tag video is the year in review tag. And this is just part of wrapping up 2022. I saw this tag on RJ Reads and decided to tag myself. And so I am bringing you this tag. This is part of, like I said, part of wrapping up 2022. Some of these answers feel sort of repetitive to some of the other videos I've done, but there are some new and different things in here too, and I hope that you enjoy it. So the first prompt is, what was your favorite book of the year? My favorite book of the year was The Green Mile by Stephen King. I really enjoyed the reading experience. I was supposed to be reading something else, and I broke my TBR kind of to read this because I really found I need an audiobook. So I got this by audiobook and then proceeded to ignore the thing I was supposed to be reading in order to finish it because it was so compelling. I really enjoyed the story. The second prompt is, what's your favorite series that you've started this year but you have not finished? And my favorite series for this year has been Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. I have not finished it because it is not finished, but I'm not even caught up with it. So the latest book is The Rhythm of War, and I have not read that book. I've read the first three. There are a couple of short stories I have not read as well. So I well and truly haven't finished even what's put out there of this series. But I was sort of advised during the third book to stop reading at that point and to read some of the other things in the Cosmere so that I would get more of the Easter eggs that's being thrown out there. So I did stop after the third book so that I started on reading Mistborn Era 1, and I read Warbreaker, which was a really great book. Sorry about that. I'm on my third video. My voice is getting a little hoarse. I read Warbreaker, which was one of my, I think, a great book of Brandon Sanderson's as well. So I'm hoping to pick up the next book in the Stormlight Archive soon, but I do kind of need to get through. I think I'm going to get through with Mistborn Era 1. I don't believe that the fifth book is coming out until 2024, so there's really no rush. The only thing that makes me concerned about waiting too long is that I may need to reread, and those are really big, thick books, and it would really eat up a lot of time that I would hope to have towards reading new books. So we'll see how that works, but that was my series that I started this year that I didn't finish. What was my favorite series that I finished this year? I haven't finished that many series this year at all, but I guess I would have to say the Reckoner series by Brandon Sanderson, Steelheart, and Firefight, Calamity, and Lux. And there's a short story called Mitosis in there as well. These are stories about if some people in the world suddenly developed superpowers, and to a T, all of them were super villains. And so the world is populated by normals who don't have any power at all, and supervillains who have a wide range of some people just have a small amount of powers, and some people have colossal powers, and the world is sort of divided up by those people and the normal people in the world, people without powers, kind of trying to live in a world that has super villains in it and no superheroes. They have to kind of become their own heroes. So that's what that series is primarily about. It was a really great series, and I pretty much devoured it in 2 months' time. What is my favorite new author that I've discovered this year? Well, Brandon Sanderson. I'm sorry, all these questions are like Brandon Sanderson, but it's true. I discovered him in 2022. I'd never read another of his books in previous years, and so once I discovered him, I just started wanting to devour everything that he's ever written. So I've read a lot of him this year, but I don't regret it. It was a really good reading year, in part because I read so many Brandon Sanderson books. But another author that I would say I discovered this year was Stephen King. And I didn't really discover him. I read Pet Sematary when I was in junior high. And I started reading it when I was in high school, but I didn't finish it in high school. And I didn't try to read any more of his stuff because I didn't have a very good reading experience trying to read it in high school. But this year, I have read 3 of his books, including it. And it's really opened my eyes towards more Stephen King. I really hope to read more of him. I really enjoyed what I have read, and so I'd almost say I rediscovered him this year, and I'm glad I did so. What is your favorite new character for this year? I'd have to Brandon Sanderson character maybe. I would have to say Dalinar Cornell. Let's try again. Dalinar Kholin from the Stormlight Archive. He is one of 3 main characters that they introduce in The Way of Kings. And Dalinar, what I like about him is he's such a seasoned, older warrior. And when you're introduced to him, he's already an experienced person. He is the voice of reason. But they hint that he wasn't always that way. They sort of hint that he was reckless in his youth, and he's got a nickname that would indicate that he was a great warrior, and now he's, an old man trying to do politics more than actual fighting. And so there is sort of a mystery almost in exploring this character, because you kind of, want to know, why is it he has this reputation of being this fierce fighter when he really seems like a diplomat, a politician. And why does he have this reputation? And how come he can't remember his wife? And lots of things that you have questions about when you read him. But I really liked him as a character. I really liked his journey. So he was one of my favorite new characters that I read this year. What was my favorite new release of the year? Well, the only new release I read this year was Stephen King's Fairy Tale. I don't really keep up with new releases, and I'm so behind being a relative term, behind all the other people that I'm sort of associated with here on BookTube. Many of them have read so much more than I have. And I feel like I'm playing catch up some. So I haven't really started a bunch of the series that are ongoing in most people's TBRs. So when a new release of that comes out, like in November, a new release of Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn Era 2, his last book in the Mistborn Era 2, came out. And everyone was all excited about it. But I haven't read Mistborn Era 1 yet. So I'm not keeping up with that release. But Stephen King's book was a standalone book, and a bunch of other people were going to read it, so I decided to read it. I pre-ordered it, and I decided to read it the day it came out. I had a really great time buddy reading that, or doing a read along with a bunch of different people on that. But that was really the only new release that I experienced this year, so therefore it was my favorite. What was my favorite reread of the year? Well, since I started BookTube, I have a goal not to be doing a lot of rereading. There have been some times when people are like, I'm going to read Harry Potter and stuff. I'm like, oh, I want to do that. I know I love Harry Potter. But I'm trying to read new books. I'm trying to expand horizons. So I haven't done a lot of rereading. But before BookTube, earlier this year, earlier in 2022, I reread The Hunger Games, and it is a book series that I've reread a few times that I really enjoy rereading. I really enjoy spending time in that world, particularly before the games start. That bit of story about Katniss and her natural environment before the games start. I really enjoy that, and in the second book, I enjoyed that. And so I had a good time rereading that series. Well, what was my biggest surprise of the year? I guess my biggest surprise of this year was just how much I'm starting to enjoy Stephen King. As I said before, I had such a difficult time with him early on, but I've loved all his adaptations. I love all the movies and stuff that are made from his books. I really wanted to like his books. And now I'm starting to really get into the world of Stephen King a little bit more. I've only read 3 books, but this year anyway. But I really enjoyed all those reading experiences, so I'm hoping to have more reading experiences with him that I really enjoy. What was my biggest disappointment of the year? That would have to be Stuff for the Children by John Saul. I really, really love John Saul, and every book up until this point that I have ever picked up, I have loved. So I wanted to, in October, when I was picking out a bunch of spooky books or horror books or whatnot for the month of October, I didn't want to fill it full of people I'd never read before. I wanted to have somebody that I had read before that I knew I was going to love. And so I picked John Saul and I picked this book and did not love it at all. I did not love the book. I did not love the experience reading it. So I was really disappointed. Especially because I've loved so many of his other books. I was really disappointed in that one. So the last one is, what is one book that you read this year that you would recommend to everyone? Brandon Sanderson? Anyone surprised? The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. I have been recommending this book actually to anybody who will listen to me. I've had in the last couple of weeks a couple of people post, give me 12 books in 12 months by, give me your 12 book recommendations or whatever, and I'll read one a month or whatnot. Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. I've done it a couple of times now. I just think it's such a great book, and it's such an epic world, and it's so interesting, the elements of this world. You got the flora and the fauna is all so new and alien and interesting. And the spren, the like little sprites and spirits of the world are just, they're delightful. And there's so many layers packed into this fantasy world that it's going to take a couple of reads and rereads to unpack it all. It is so good, but his writing is so easy to follow and is so accessible that you don't feel bogged down by all of it. You just let it wash over you, and it's such a great atmosphere. It's such a great read. I love it, and I recommend it to anyone who isn't very scared of big thick books, because that's the only big drawback I think of the series is the books are really big, and they can be a deterrent to someone who isn't an avid reader like booktubers are. So, but I still recommended it. So that was my year-end review tag. At this point, this is usually a place where you tag other people, and so I would like to tag anybody who has had a fantastic reading year and wants to brag about the great characters that they've found, the great series that they've started, their best reading, and even throw in a little bit of their best rereads of the year. Anybody who wants to brag about how great a reading experience they've had this last year, I tag you to do this year in review tag. And I appreciate RJ for having put it up. It looked like a fun tag to do. And so I took it upon myself to do so. And I thank you very much for giving me the idea. So if you enjoyed this content, please leave me a like. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It's free to do, and it really helps me out. Leave me some comments. If you don't want to do the whole tag, but you want to answer a question or two in there, feel free in the comments. What was your favorite read? What was your most disappointing read? What did you reread that you really loved rereading? If you want to have a discussion about any of the books that I mentioned, let's do it. So leave me a comment. And I hope that you've enjoyed this, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day.